The vault has been opened. With the recent release of the Pentagon's declassified files on UFO files, the world is finally facing a reality it once ignored. But while the government is just now admitting to the unknown, one man was already decades ahead. The headlines may feel new, the mystery is not. Long before leaked footage, Senate hearings, and official acknowledgments, Carl Sagan was already asking a far more dangerous question. What if we are not alone, and one day, something out there finds us first? He didn't wait for governments to catch up. Instead, he helped prepare humanity's first intentional greeting to the unknown. A message designed not for Earth, but for whoever might be watching. A cosmic handshake sent into the dark. To understand why we are seeing them now, we have to look back at the moment we first introduced ourselves to the stars. In 1977, humanity did something that defied logic. We launched a bottle into the cosmic ocean, not knowing if it would ever be found. But this wasn't just a machine, it was a ghost of our civilization. That person who sent a message to aliens on Voyager 1's 40,000-year journey, Carl Sagan. Imagine 1 billion years from now. The Earth is gone. The sun has faded. Every monument we ever built is dust. Yet moving silently through the infinite dark, there is a small golden disk carrying our last message to the stars. It sounds almost absurd. A species still divided by borders, wars, and fear decided to introduce itself to the universe. Not with weapons, not with threats, but with music, mathematics, and the sounds of life itself. The machine carrying this impossible dream was Voyager 1, a spacecraft built by NASA in the late 1970s, originally designed for a practical mission: study Jupiter and Saturn, capture data, push the boundaries of exploration, then continue outward into deep space. On paper, Voyager was just engineering: metal, circuits, antennas, fuel, calculations. A masterpiece of precision built for science. But somewhere in the middle of all that logic, a different kind of idea was born. Someone asked a strange question. If this machine is already leaving the solar system, why not send something more? Why not send a piece of us? Not a flag, not a political symbol, not proof of power. Something deeper. We were here. This is who we were. This is what it felt like to be human. That idea led to Carl Sagan, a scientist, astronomer, and thinker whose imagination stretched far beyond laboratories and equations. To him, Voyager was never just a spacecraft. It was an opportunity. A time capsule launched into eternity. A bottle thrown into a cosmic ocean with no map, no destination, and no certainty that anyone would ever find it. Sagan assembled a small team to create what became the Golden Record, a gold-plated disc designed to tell the story of Earth. Not through a single language, but through experiences, through emotion, through sound. Inside were greetings in 55 languages, the sound of wind, rain, thunder, waves crashing against shores, birds singing at dawn, a baby crying, a heartbeat, the pulse of life. There was music too: Bach, Beethoven, traditional songs from different cultures, and even Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Good. Because somehow, if aliens were ever going to understand us, rock and roll felt necessary. The record also carried images encoded into analog form: human anatomy, mathematical definitions, DNA structures, landscapes, architecture, a portrait of our species and our world compressed into a fragile, spinning archive. None of it came with expectation. There was no guarantee anyone would ever hear it. No promise of contact, no signal waiting for a reply. It was hope in physical form, optimism pressed into gold. On September 5th, 1977, Voyager 1 launched from Earth. Fire below, silence above. A machine escaped gravity, carrying humanity's introduction letter to the cosmos. And now, decades later, Voyager 1 is still moving, far beyond the planets, far beyond the boundaries of our home, drifting alone through interstellar darkness. 40,000 years from now, long after every empire has collapsed and every language we know has changed beyond recognition, Voyager may still be traveling, still carrying proof that once, on a small blue planet, something conscious looked up at the stars and wanted to be known. Chapter 2: The Golden Record. How do you summarize an entire species on a single disk? Not a country, not a language, not a generation, but all of humanity. Its beauty, its contradictions, its fears, its hopes, its music, its science, and the fragile evidence that we were ever here at all. That was the challenge placed in front of Carl Sagan and his small team in 1977. Voyager 1 was already preparing to leave Earth, carrying technology designed for exploration. But attached to it would be something far more unusual. A message. A 12-inch gold-plated copper disc built not for humans, but for strangers we had never met. It was an impossible assignment. How do you compress the experience of being human into something so small? How do you decide what deserves to represent billions of people, thousands of cultures, and all of recorded history? There was no guidebook, no previous attempt, no way to know if anyone would ever find it, let alone understand it. Yet, Sagan and his team treated the project with remarkable seriousness. This was not a publicity stunt. It was a deliberate act of communication, a quiet statement sent into the dark. The first challenge was language. If this record was to become Earth's introduction, it needed voices, not one voice. Many. Greetings were recorded in 55 languages from ancient tradition. Hello from the people of Earth. A sentence so ordinary between humans became something extraordinary when aimed at the stars. Then came music, and with it, another impossible question. What does humanity sound like? Bach and Beethoven represented mathematical elegance and emotional depth. Traditional music from around the world carried cultural memory and rhythm older than modern borders. And then, unexpectedly, Chuck Berry was included too. Because humanity is not neat. It is not one mood or one identity. We are discipline and improvisation, structure and chaos, philosophy and rock and roll. Somehow, that contradiction felt honest. But perhaps the most intimate part of the Golden Record was not the music. It was something even simpler. The sounds of Earth, thunder rolling across the sky, wind moving through air, waves breaking against shorelines, birds singing at dawn, footsteps, a heartbeat, a baby crying, a mother kissing her child, tiny moments, ordinary details, the kinds of sounds humans barely notice because they are. The record also contained images encoded into analog signals. Human anatomy, DNA structure, mathematics, architecture, landscapes, scientific diagrams, cities, oceans, mountains, a visual archive of what Earth looked like, how life functioned, and what our minds had learned. And all of it was prepared for an audience we could not imagine. No shared language, no shared history, no certainty of shared senses. This was more than data storage, more than engineering. It was a cosmic handshake, a quiet introduction from one fragile civilization extending outward into deep time, not demanding a reply, not expecting rescue, simply saying, this is who we were, this is what we loved, this is what it sounded like to be alive here. Somewhere in the unimaginable future, if another intelligence ever discovers that spinning golden disk, they may know one thing. Before we vanished, we tried to say hello. Chapter 3: The Pulse of the Heart. In the middle of one of humanity's most ambitious scientific projects, something unexpected happened. While scientists were preparing a message for the unknown, another message was quietly being written. Not in mathematics, not in engineering, but in emotion. Somewhere between selecting greetings, Carl Sagan and Anne Druyan fell in love. Not the dramatic kind built for cinema. No grand speeches, no carefully scripted romance. Just two minds slowly pulled into each other's orbit. Carl was already famous for asking humanity uncomfortable questions. What are we? Why are we here? Are we alone? Questions that feel even heavier now, in an age obsessed with newly released UFO files. Not because those files offer answers, but because they remind us how little we understand. And if anything unknown ever intercepts Voyager, what would matter most? Not our military briefings, not our politics, but evidence that we were alive in the fullest possible sense. That is why one of the most extraordinary moments in the Golden Record project feels almost impossible to believe. The team decided to record human brainwaves. Anne Druyan volunteered. Scientists recorded the electrical activity of her brain. But what makes this extraordinary is not the machine. It is what she chose to think about. She thought about history, civilization, the future of humanity, and she thought about Carl. At that exact moment, Anne had recently fallen in love with him. So hidden inside the Golden Record are the actual brain patterns of a human being experiencing love. Not described, not symbolized, recorded. And maybe that is what any unknown intelligence would find most fascinating. Not that we were intelligent, but that we could feel. Chapter 4. The pale blue dot years passed. Voyager kept moving, farther than any human-made object before it. Then, in 1990, Carl Sagan made one final request. Before Voyager's cameras were permanently shut down, he asked NASA for one last image, a photograph of Earth, from billions of miles away. The result became one of the most important images in human history, a tiny pixel suspended in a shaft of light, almost invisible. That was us. Every empire, every war, every invention, every religion, every argument, every ambition, compressed into a nearly invisible dot. In today's world, where UFO files dominate headlines and unexplained objects fuel endless speculation, this image matters more than ever, not because it explains what is out there, but because it reminds us what we are: small, fragile, temporary. If the universe is larger, stranger, and more populated than we imagined, then Carl understood something early. Arrogance is not a survival strategy. Humility is. Here's Chapter 5. The Eternal Ambassador Voyager. One is now beyond the planets, beyond the influence of the solar wind, moving through interstellar space. And still it carries us, not physically, symbolically. A fragile archive of a civilization that knew it would not last forever. One day humanity may disappear, cities collapse, languages vanish, oceans change. But Voyager will keep moving. 40,000 years from now, it may pass near another star, long after every person alive today is gone. And inside that machine will remain something astonishing. Proof that we existed. Proof that we wondered. Proof that we loved. The UFO files may leave us with more questions than answers. But Voyager offers something far more meaningful. Not speculation. An introduction. A deliberate message sent by a species aware of its own fragility. A cosmic handshake into the dark. And perhaps that is humanity's most beautiful contradiction. We may know almost nothing about what waits beyond us. Yet still, we introduced ourselves anyway. Because while the UFO files give us questions, Voyager 1 remains our only real answer.